Okay.
You mean at the
Yes.
bandhas? Okay, then that would be awesome because I could probably read them.
Okay.
I thought you meant she's going to do.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I do my things.
Okay.
Okay. So.
She's new. She just, right?
Mhm. Okay, so Mula Bandha is the primary bandha, right? It's the one that you need to be teaching to all of your students if you have hopes of teaching them a spiritual practice, right? We can be teaching them asana practice, we can teach them breathing practice, we can be teaching them all kinds of things that are very, very, very beneficial to them. They will feel better, they will, have all of the benefits of yoga. But if we decide that we want to be teaching a spiritual practice with the goal of awakening, right, then we want to be using the bandhas. There are 3 knots that are tied in the Kundalini channel: the knot of Brahma, the knot of Vishnu, the knot of Shiva. So those are the 3 aspects of God according to Hindu tradition, right? So Brahma is the creator, and Vishnu is the preserver.
You said 3 knots.
Yes, knots is in a knot. Yeah. Vishnu is the preserver and Shiva is the destroyer. Between the 3 of them, they represent the cycle of life. Yeah? So the first knot, the knot of Brahma, is tied at Muladhara chakra. So in order to understand or untie your access point to creation, right, which is what we're working with, we have to master Mula Bandha. Are you ready to play with Mula Bandha?
Yeah.
All right, so let's pop the pens down and have a seat. I will also tell you that when you teach yoga, if you decide to do this, you need to make friends with a lot of words that people don't like to hear. Anus being one of them, and we're going to talk about that, right? So you go ahead and cross your legs, close your eyes. Let's sit up comfortably straight and find the breath rhythm. Really slow it down. We're going to be working with the exhales because it's already a natural contraction point. But in your mind, I want you to see the pelvic floor, right? And I want you to see let's call it a tennis ball, just sitting right on the pelvic floor. Okay? We don't necessarily want to bounce the tennis ball, but we want to lift it up. So the first thing I'm just going to say is, as you exhale, squeeze the pelvic floor. So it's a bit like a Kegel. You want to be bringing the pubic bone and the tailbone together, just using the hammock of muscle, right? And then when you exhale or inhale, you want to release it. Right? So as you exhale, it's a squeeze. And it takes the entire exhale to squeeze it up. So as you're exhaling, start pulling the tennis ball up. And when you're inhaling, we're relaxing the pelvic floor down. We're going to keep going, right? Listening as we're practicing. The exhale is the bringing up, the inhale is releasing down. You must make sure that you are letting the pelvic floor go when you inhale. You're dropping it. Right? So it's a fairly big movement at this point, right? The urethra is lifting up and in towards the uterus, right? The anus is contracting gently up and in towards that center point, right? So it's what we call gross muscle movement. Okay. So now inhale and hold your breath. I want you to bounce the tennis ball. So it's bounce, 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 bounce. Well, breath stays in the body, just lifting and dropping, lifting and dropping, lifting and dropping the pelvic floor. So it's like a Kegel really, really, really fast, but we're not squeezing the vaginal walls in, right? We're lifting everything up. And exhale, relax everything. Inhale, hold the breath, and bounce the tennis ball. And relax. Okay, just take a couple deep breaths. Did you feel it? We know where we're at, right? Okay. So now we don't have to sit in meditative space, but instead of squeezing the whole thing up, literally just squeeze the urethra. Just that one small piece, right? So it's right in the front of the vagina, just squeeze that one small piece. Keep everything else relaxed. It's not easy, right? Hold it and just breathe. That's one piece. You'd be literally trying to lift your penis up. Yes.
Oh,
You've never seen them.
I mean,
See, now the difference is that at this point, the front point, their urethra is all the way down, so they'd be trying to pull their penis back up, right? Not a fan, but that's what they would be doing, right? Okay, so you relax the urethra, and now we just want to squeeze the vaginal walls towards each other without lifting anything up. Right? it's hard. So that is the internal motion. Right? So you squeeze it in and now bring that in so that we're like in, right? Now I want you to try and lift your cervix up some without squeezing your urethra. Right? Cervix is at the top, it's the base of the uterus, so it holds it all together. And relax. Urethra, cervix, vagina, stay relaxed. So if it were a man, he'd be trying to lift his testicles up.
That's, I think, what I was asking.
Yes.
Can they do that?
Yes, they can. Right? So the thing with Mula Bandha is that we always say lift the pelvic floor up, but that's not necessarily totally accurate. And when you break it down into pieces like this, you realize that everything is coming into a triangle piece, right? So it's not only coming up, it's coming up and in. And that's because the second chakra rests right in the uterus for women, towards the backside, towards the spine. So you're not just trying to get the energy like, yay, come up, woo! You're gathering pieces as you go along, right? So what'll happen is that Mula Bandha will give you enough lift and thrust to get through second chakra up to third, where you got to pick it up and move it up again, okay? But we're not done with Mula Bandha yet, right? So now let everything else be relaxed and just do Ashwini Mudra, right? So the vagina is relaxed, cervix is relaxed, urethra is relaxed, and all you're doing is the anal contraction. It's subtle. It's I'm not that far.
I can't isolate that. Yeah, I'm struggling to isolate. Don't watch it. I'm like,
don't watch it. It's like watching
I need a minute to like,
I need some doors. Can I have some privacy, please? Right? Okay, and so now practice the roll, and this is very hard. So urethra, vagina, cervix, anus. The one relaxes as the other one comes up. You'll notice that like you'll master a few of them, where they'll flutter, if that makes sense. Now you'll also notice once you get the roll done, your lower body starts to maneuver with it, right? So don't keep your pelvis locked. There's a little roll that happens, right? Right?
I think I finally did it.
Yeah. So now true Mula Bandha is just the cervix. Can you feel it? Like the true Mula Bandha is just the cervix, and that's that subtle. Now, what you'll teach people is lift the pelvic floor, and then the whole thing will come up. The pelvis will tip, and you'll get the muscular orientation that you want to do your asana. But in meditative practice, untying the knot is just the cervix or just the testicles. Okay? So what that does is pumps the energy up. So when you lift it up, your tailbone tips under a little bit. So observe that, right? Little tiny hook of the tailbone under. It straightens out the spine. So now the energy doesn't have to do any curvies. Yeah, right? Get a little spacey. The energy doesn't have to do the big curve, right? Because the muscle, the subtle muscle position has straightened up the channel. Okay. So what it does is it gets up through Mula Bandha and it pumps, right? You're untying that knot by, there are a couple of ways to do it. One, you can do bounce the ball, right? Bounce, 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 wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And you do rounds of that for time, right? And so like you start with anything like 3 minutes, and then you take it to usually 7 minutes, and then you take it to 9 minutes, then you take it to 11 minutes, and then 31 minutes, but anything more than that, and you're like,
why are those numbers?
because that's the numbers they give you. Yeah, quite honestly, I actually in my other notebook have what happens at different points in time. So there's chemical reactions that happen inside the body at different time lengths. Again, yoga science is a speculation in the extreme, right? It's like, really? Like, why 40 days? I researched why 40 days. And the mathematics on why 40 days it's fascinating. It has to do with something with the rotation of the earth and the tip against the sun and the way that we used to run the calendars. And if you do it, like 40 days is actually a month. So, oh. So a lot of the numbers you just go, oh, okay. Yeah. You'll find that after a while, 3 minutes is very manageable, right? Very manageable. 11 becomes very challenging. 31 becomes ridiculous. But you would sit down with Mula Bandha as a spiritual practice, as it's a kriya, right? Like you sit down and you do it. So you would do a few minutes of bouncing the ball, and then you would do the sustained holds and drops, and the sustained holds and drops, and then you would move on into pumping the energy out the spine. So we're going through a very abbreviated way of doing this. We will have a practice, but we need to get all the information out first. So once you get through the Mula Bandha and you've moved the energy up through second chakra, most people, so help me God, do not make it through second chakra, right? So first chakra is all of your earth stuff. I didn't mean to do chakras tonight, but we kind of have to. It's all your earth stuff. It's all about was I taken care of as a baby, right? Was I fed? Can I trust other people? Right? Can I leave the cave and go out into the world to create relationship with other people? Right? So that's all first chakra stuff. And you need to bring all of that stuff out so that it gets clearer and you lift up into second chakra. Well, second chakra is all about you and me, right? You and me. Well, how did my mom treat me? How did my dad treat me? Right? Did I form relationships with the first people who were supposed to love me that taught me how to love somebody else in the world? Right? Okay, well, when I did that, what happened with those other people? Right? So in order to get through all of this and get the energy up to make yourself light, which is enlightenment, get light, shed all that shit. It's a dark place. So you'll hear a lot of people who are like, I'm enlightened. You're like, okay, talk to me about your personal relationships, and that's going to be the first key. But you got to bust through the second chakra to get up to the third or second bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, and do write this one down. Uddiyana, Uddiyana. Uddiyana, Uddiyana Bandha. You'll hear a lot of dropping. So sometimes you'll hear me say Uddiyana Band, right? Uddiyana Band. A lot of people will just drop the A's. They'll spell it that way, so it won't be asana, it'll be asan, right? So just don't get attached. Uddiyana Bandha is the abdominal lock. Stimulates third chakra, pumps the energy up into the heart so that you can begin to untie the knot of Vishnu. Okay? Knot of Vishnu is in the heart.
Pardon me. So the first knot is chakra speak 1 and 2 for Brahma?
1.
Just 1.
Yeah.
So, and then that leads to 2.
Mm-hmm.
But usually people don't get past 2.
Usually people don't get past 2. They don't. Although, you know, after a lot of work, then they do, right? But shit's ugly, man. You gotta work through it. I think it's age too.
So Uddiyana Bandha is 3.
Yes. But it unties. You're looking for logic, there isn't any.
So when people talk about unwinding, is it also with this these bandhas too?
When they talk about unwinding?
Like releasing, like when you do like myofascial work and you do a lot of the energy work and they kind of unwind.
I don't know. That's an interesting correlation that I've not studied. Yeah. Yeah. You hear a lot of like energy workers or healers saying that like, well, I'm going to fix the rotation of your chakra, right? Like, oh, I'm going to spin it correctly, or I'm going to clear it for you. My stance on that is the only person who can really clear your chakra is you, right? So somebody can get in there and offer you like, you know, a spit shine, but it's not going to be cleared until you've done the work that you need to do. And then that bears into the questions of like, do the chakras actually really exist, or are they just a psychological ladder that allows us to elevate our minds and elevate our emotional experience to understand how to be inside relationship with other humans from a divine perspective. Jung wrote an amazing book about Kundalini yoga and the psychology of Kundalini yoga. Jung, Carl Jung. He was a big practitioner or a big believer in the energetics. But it was a great study on like the chakras and the yoga philosophy, and he laid it on top of a Western philosophy, right? So, you know, you can take the chakras as literally as you want. I happen to believe that they do exist on planes and density, but they also are really a psychological ladder.
Yeah, I always tell my clients, I would say bear this in mind. They don't control you, you control them. A lot of people almost look at it as a separate entity of themselves,
yes.
Right? Hey, fix my chakra, like change my oil.
Yeah.
I'm like, if your second chakra is closed, which is not completely closed, right?
Right.
You just tell it to open.
Yes, but you have to be prepared to receive what it dumps into your lap. Yeah. You know, because that second chakra is where we have all of our sexual issues. It's where we have all of our interpersonal relationship issues. It has so much. Huh? Lucky you.
Lucky you. People that get menstrual cramps and thyroid tumors, you know, that's all second chakra.
Yeah.
You know? And I think they're fine, then they have like, you know, partial.
And it manifests. Everything manifests in different ways. Yeah. So Uddiyana Bandha. To exercise Uddiyana Bandha, you pull the upper abdomen in and up. It's almost like you're trying to tuck your diaphragm. It just made me burp, I'm sorry. If you want to tuck your diaphragm up underneath your rib cage. Unlike Mula Bandha, which can be a sustained hold, Uddiyana Bandha, in my experience, is not a sustained hold, right? You can't hold it and breathe at the same time. So it becomes a true pump, right? Pull it up on an exhale, get shit moving, let it go. Pull it up and let it go. Hut, 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 hut. Yes, that's that thing. Interestingly, some modern Hatha traditions will call Uddiyana Bandha the abdominal lock that brings the lower abdomen in and down. That is technically a piece of Mula Bandha, right? So if you were doing, when you do Mula Bandha and you pull it up and the tailbone tips under, what muscles are the antagonists is the abdominal muscles, right? So they will naturally tuck in. Does that make sense? Right? So you'll be in like a power class and they're saying Uddiyana Bandha, and they want you to pull the lower abdomen back and down because it engages the core muscles, right? And gives you the power to do in a properly aligned sequence. However, spiritually or in a traditional energetic practice, Uddiyana Bandha is in and up. It's a pump. Now, when you pull it in, what happens? The rib cage drops and the curve in the spine negates, right? So all of the bandhas are creating a straight path in the actual spinal channel. So if you pull Mula Bandha and then Uddiyana Bandha, this should be straight, right? So does that make sense? Do you see what's happening when you pull it that up and in? Straightens everything out, creates the path. Huh?
I love it to myself. I love all this stuff.
I do too, but here's what I'm finding, like, it's gonna take this is a good introduction,
Yeah.
but holy crap, there's a lot.
Yeah,
So
well, we're gonna do stand later.
Yeah.
So stand's the energetic anatomy section.
It's a rabbit hole once you even tip your toes.
Yeah, it's
The rest of
fascinating.
your life,
Yeah.
just read your path.
Yes. And it becomes another vocabulary, right? So like once you have this languaging, you can talk to somebody else who has this languaging, like, man, it's a first chakra day. And they're gonna go, I totally know what you mean. It just changes things. The third bandha that we use is called Jalandhar Bandha, Jalandhar, Jalandhar Bandha. Sometimes there's an A on the end of that. And that is the neck lock. So there are two aspects to Jalandhar Bandha that I think are, they're very odd to me. One is that it's a pump, right? So all of the bandhas are pumps. But also it prevents too much energy from like flying up the spine. So when you hear both of those things, they don't seem like they sit side by side, right? Or that they connect. You're trying to pump the energy up the spine and into the brow center, right? So that it'll be transmuted and off you go. But by the same turn, no, it also is going to keep the energy down in the body so that it doesn't get here and I head off into, you know, talk about the rabbit hole. There you go. Yes. And it's fifth chakra. So it is not contrary to belief this. It is straight back. Straight, pretty. I'm looking at myself in the recording. Sammy's gonna crack up on that one, but it's this.
Hi, Sammy.
Hi, Sammy. It's this. It pulls it back. So you're bringing the chin back towards the notch of the collarbone. And what does that do? Straightens out the back of your neck. Yes. So when you're pulling the three bandhas together, your spine should be totally straight. And not straight in the way that we talk about where it's like the natural lumbar, the natural thoracic to cervical curve. It should be actually straight. And that creates a channel to bring all that energy up. You have to want to bring the energy up, right? You want people to know that this is what you're doing, because if it's, right, like spontaneous, it's very unpleasant. It's very unpleasant. It's very disturbing. And it's disturbing to watch. Please believe. Please trust me. Tell them what you're doing. Okay. So those are the three primary bandhas that you will be using on a strictly physical level. Mula Bandha will help adjust the pelvis, right? So you can get the pelvis into the correct position for back bends, for standing poses. I mean, for folds, yes, but it makes things a little harder. Uddiyana Bandha will engage the core, right? Because when you pull the abdomen up and in, the navel activates. So in your planks, you could have them pull Uddiyana Bandha, although it makes it a little more challenging breath-wise, if that makes sense. So you could work it on the exhales. Exhale, we're holding in plank, pull Uddiyana Bandha, pull the upper abdomen up and in. Right, on a strictly physical level, Jalandhar Bandha will get the chin into an appropriate position for your folds, right? So whenever anybody folds, you'll observe that there's a natural dump. People want to like just drop the head, which stresses out the rhomboids and the trapezius, and it compromises the integrity of the spine in a fold. So if you have them come into Jalandhar Bandha in their fold, they will naturally, it kind of locks things up to a certain extent. Yeah?
I see that.
And that gives you the ability to get the head down, which is what everybody wants, without the dump. So they serve physical purposes. They're much more powerfully energetic, however. Okay. If we roll the eyeballs up and in, that is another bandha. I don't know what it's called. I've never heard it named, but it's called the eye lock. No, so the eyelids are closed and you roll the eyeballs up and you look at your eyebrow, at your Ajna chakra. Okay, you'll notice that will start to happen spontaneously, like the longer that you meditate, or if you're running a particularly powerful thing, when you break, the eyes will just start to flutter and they'll roll upward and inward to look at the eyebrow point, right? So now they're trying to access another chakra. Untying the knot of Shiva. Shiva being the destroyer, right? So the Ajna chakra, we're a little off course, but not much. The Ajna chakra is where the veil parts, right? This is where Maya, or the illusion of our reality, is destroyed. Don't chant Om Namah Shivaya without knowing what you're asking for. Right? Have you ever heard that chant? Om Namah Shivaya.
Oh my gosh, I
Om
used to do
Namah
it for like
Shivaya.
45 minutes.
Shivaya. Yeah, without knowing what you're asking for. You're asking for Shiva, the god of destruction, to come and destroy the illusion. And the illusion, according to yoga philosophy, is the illusion of yourself as an individual being, right? Your I identity, your ego identity, this reality that we are all participating in, right?
This is some deep shit.
It is. Yoga's deep shit. Yeah, yoga is really the quest to break down consensual reality and understand that everything is just energy, everything is God. You yourself don't actually exist. the knot. Mm-hmm. They call it Granthi, Granthi is the technical name, but it's a knot.
You just said something that's trying to write down. Yoga is really the quest to,
I don't know. Oh, destroy consensual reality.
yes. I want to chew on that for a week, you know.
Do you know what consensual reality is? What that means?
I'm going to guess that it's the reality that I have agreed to, or something. Because
Yeah, that we've agreed to. We agree that this is solid.
Yeah.
Right? We agree that this is solid, therefore this is solid. If enough of us stopped agreeing that this was solid, it would not be, right? So
and therefore we no longer do this.
we would have broken it down. Yeah, rabbit hole.
This is really
Yoga is some rabbit hole. Yes. Right? It has relationship to the pituitary and the pineal glands. I went and got my thyroid tested. I'm like, there's something wrong with my thyroid. And then he's like, no, it's fine. He's like, the test we ran, and it was the PSA, no, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. And I'm like, well, is that the thyroid? He's like, no, we test your pineal gland. And I'm like, bitch, my pineal is fine. I've been doing Kundalini yoga for 10 years. My thyroid was fine. But, right? Like, Ajna chakra. That's where it all goes down, is Ajna chakra. Okay, so the final bandha is the tongue lock. And that is when we talked about this in pranayama, when you bring the tip of the tongue between the two front teeth up into the gum line. So it's like on the roof of the mouth, but not on the roof of the mouth. It's literally at that seam point. Okay. So when you do all 5 of those together, it's called Mahabandha. I like to do Mahabandha on suspension, right? So as you are exhaling, right, you wave it up. And you suspend the breath out, inhale, everything relaxes. You want to talk about a trippy practice. So let's do it.
So now, everything we did, this is traditionally what's in most Kriyas with Kundalini, though, right? You do all this.
You do all of it. The thing that about Kundalini that is different.
I should keep going back to
No.
Like then what I'm.
It's which way, but it's true.
Yeah.
Kundalini is a way of getting people to do this without having to educate them on what they're doing. Right? It's.
Yeah, because everything you said, I've heard, and instead of getting the education, then I started going out buying books.
Yeah. Yeah, but instead of getting the education, you get the experience.
Yeah, you get the experience. And you said like the Uddiyana Bandha. I had no idea what that was, but then the teachers would always say, you know, what to do, but I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. I just did what they told me to do.
Yes, and
now
also
I'm looking at the book, like, yeah, I know what this is, but I didn't know.
you'll see in Kundalini, and it's in the books, but it's not necessarily in the teaching of a regular class. Like if you just go, but Mula Bandha is held all the time. Like you do the entire practice, and Ashtanga Yoga, Mula Bandha is held all the time because it's the primary activator. It's the first piece, right? What you've got to get figured out before you can start to climb that ladder. And so just the act of holding it, right, as you're just walking along or in Kundalini Yoga doing other things. Jalandhar Bandha is supposed to be held in most of the meditations in Kundalini Yoga, and it's not always taught because as time has gone on, it's been slowly let go of in the books, right? So like if Jane goes and buys a book, it doesn't necessarily have the detailed information that you got from the old books.
Now, it looks like I just off.
Yeah, no, we have time.
I take her to
Yeah.
Kundalini. The child okay to, or she's probably not even focused on this kind of stuff and just kind of doing the breath work.
I'm always a little curious, right? So let's speculate for a moment. What happens when you're doing a whole Kundalini Yoga Kriya and you don't have Mula Bandha pulled? I don't either. Does it work? Does it work all the way?
I would think it doesn't work all the way, but even if you get lazy, because the teacher doesn't know if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get tired, you're like, what the? She doesn't know what I'm keeling or not, so I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're machine yourself, right?
How far away is our Kundalini section?
August.
So maybe I'll do a class or two just to see.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm wondering. I'm assuming, like, tuning me out now, that she probably wasn't even trying to do.
No,
she was just,
but you just have to be prepared. Like, I mean, and they teach Kundalini Yoga to children. There's Kundalini Yoga children camps. There are a lot of things that are beneficial in a yoga program, any yoga program for children.
Is Pamela Raymond a good one to take?
Yes, she is. And Dama just stopped teaching, which is just a damn shame.
All together? Oh,
She went back to school.
okay.
I would say keep going, you know, especially in the age that we're in, you know, all the children that are manifesting now are not, they're more.
yeah, they probably get it, but I really did something. Okay.
Yeah, just keep an eye. That's all it is, children-wise, just keep an eye.
So she's the only one that teaches it here now, Pamela Raymond, it looks like.
Yeah.
What's that?
Isn't there a new one?
Not for the next 2 weeks. I just.
Andrea Pelletier, who's here on Saturdays. she might be on vacation, but Andrea, Pamela.
I've only done Dama and Pamela.
And yeah, Dama.
One girl, I forgot her name. She had olive skin. She had an accent. I did.
Oh, Dunlop.
Yeah.
She's in Colorado now.
Yeah, I did her women's class.
What's that? Oh, we shouldn't get off topic.
I like Caitlin too. She's very new.
Very new.
Caitlin's a new one. What?
She's very new. Go old first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go old first, because something that has been happening, and now we're off track, but anyway, something that's been happening is that you can see when an individual was trained, right? Because the traditions have changed. Okay, so like when I learned, it was a certain opening chant, right? When it was a certain closing chant. The breath of fire was taught this way, and so this was 10 years ago, something like that. Breath of fire was taught a certain way. The mantras were taught a certain way, but that's different now, right? So now each, and they're trying very hard to stay very consistent. And Pamela's like, she looks at me like, stop being such a Grinch. And I'm like, I don't care, I'm right. But the schools now, so now we're 2 or 3 iterations removed from Yogi Bhajan, right? And so now the opening chant is the same, but different. Now the mantra is the same, but different. I've heard breath of fire taught ways where I'm like, are you trying to kill people? But it's the vocabulary that they've learned, right? And just because of what I've observed, I am going to tell you for this course, go old first. Get the foundation from the old teachers. Like shit, I would go over to Fort Lauderdale, no, they're in Davie, and go sit in with Devakar. Like this woman she's terrifying, right? Because her magnetic field, and she's nicely, right? Just nice. But you walk into her field and you're like, whoa. She studied with Yogi Bhajan, right? So she's the first generation. So Pamela's like 6th generation.
What's this lady's name?
Devakar. Devakaur. It is worth the trip.
Really?
Yes. Just to sit in the field of somebody who's been doing it for 40 years.
C-A-R-R?
Kaur. Yeah. It's worth it. Okay, so let's do this, and then we will be, we're trending quick because I talk fast, then we'll be done for the night.
We could do a field trip over to the East
Oh,
Coast.
absolutely.
Yeah, let me know.
So one other thing, what did I just want to tell you something? What were we talking about? Field tripping, Devakar. Oh, Kundalini. So like the Kundalini unit, Dama is going to teach, right? Dama will be here. So you'll have 2 hours with Dama. And then you'll have 2 hours with Pamela. And you'll have 2 hours with Jessica, right? So like we'll go through and you'll see that the way somebody talks can change something dramatically. The vocabulary that they use can alter your experience. Right? You'll see the difference from old school. I mean, Dama went to the mothership to learn this stuff. She was out in Espanola and did it in 3 weeks, 15 years ago, you know, versus Pamela, who's brand new. So you'll just see, and it's an important like study, right? How somebody's magnetic field, for how long they've been doing it, how they learn, really makes a big difference. Okay, so we're going to do Mahabandha and we're going to do microcosmic orbit. So I talked briefly about microcosmic orbit during the pranayama unit. Microcosmic orbit runs in 2 sections. First section starts at that root chakra, right? It starts on the pelvic floor and it travels up the spine, over the crown of the head, terminates between the 2 front teeth, right? Tongue picks up that lock, runs another channel straight down the front. So the trick with microcosmic orbit is there's 2 things that you can do with it. 1, you can just run it, right? And that charges your whole body with just an energy. And it's just a loop. All you need is to just train your body that this is how you want to run the energy. And it gets stronger and brighter. You know, it's like, I don't know, a car engine. It just keeps getting clean. Or you can gather that sex energy, that heavy jing, and you can roll it up the spine and drop it in the navel to be used, right? So we'll only do a small bit of that because it is later in the evening, and I don't want you to be like, yeah! when you get out of here.
My husband's out of town.
Right. Well, you save that. Put it up in your belly button. So the navel is our personal power center, right? And we can start in the morning and run an exercise, you know, run meditation or a breath work, and literally drop energy into the navel center to be used throughout the rest of the day. So it's like charging a battery. Okay. Mahabandha for me is always a meditation that's like woo, because it just is up, right? Everything is up. I do want to say before we get started, the longer that I've been doing this, the traditional philosophy is that all we're trying to do is get it up, right? That's where it stops. You bring all of your human information up. And then I had a moment where I was like, well, what then? But then you're still here, right? You're still on earth. You still have to wake up in the morning. You got to feed your kids. You got to go to work. You know, you got to talk to people who maybe aren't up, right?
Right.
If we're still here and we're in interaction, there's a second process, and that we have to not only learn to bring it up, but we have to learn how to bring it down, right? So we're literally going up to look for divine, and we're trying to bring divine down, right, back onto earth. So it becomes a process. The transition station for that is the heart center. So what we're trying to do is move the heart from, you know, oh, it's our heart center, to being a divine human, right? So if you think that this is all human, the lower triangle is all human, right? The upper triangle is all divine. This is where we're divine human. So once you complete the process, you start to run it both ways, right? It goes like this and out. So don't forget that part. You got to get up first, because otherwise it's dirty. But then it goes out. And that's the process of what we're trying to do as modern yogis. Let's breathe. Okay, come to seated. We're going to get real. If you want to be up against a wall, go ahead and do that. Let the tongue be relaxed, right? Do not have the tongue in lock. It's hard for me. I always have it in lock.
Me too.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. Put it there, but don't push it. Does that make sense? Like, okay.
All I'm focusing on is don't
touch your tongue to your teeth. Okay. So we'll start with long, deep breathing. And now, as we're exhaling, we're going to lift the pelvic floor up. When you inhale, you're relaxing. And the next time you exhale, pull pelvic floor up and abdomen up and in. So we're doing Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha. And the inhale relaxes. And remember, we don't lock the body. Let it roll a little bit. I want you to notice as you're locking if the energy is moving and getting kind of stuck in you. If you observe the base of the neck, you may sense that that's where the next lock has to happen, right? So the next time that you exhale, we'll rock all 3 locks. And the body will start to wave ever so slightly as we're lifting and relaxing. Remember, we're not cascading it over the front of the body. We're just taking it up. It's coming to the crown of the head. And now, keep rolling and add the eyes. And push the tongue in. We're going to add a 3-count suspension. So you're going to hold the breath out with all those locks held in. Just count to yourself, 1, 2, 3. With the eyes closed, breathe, let all the locking go. Fingers to the floor. What'd you feel? Could be nothing, just what'd you feel?
I just felt like I'm in a happy place.
Okay.
I kind of got exhausted. I don't know why, but I got, by the end of it, I was like, wow.
Work. Yeah. Okay.
I felt like I lost, like, from here, I got like Blocked, right, like that.
Mad?
No.
Lost?
I lost my concentration.
Mm.
I got stuck, weird.
Examine that for later.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Excellent. So for me right here, I think the crown of my head is very hot.
Maybe that's why I got so tired. Like I just all of a sudden, because I had awoken,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden I was like,
Mm-hmm. It's also a long day.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's warm.
mine's hot.
This
Okay.
feels like I have something
On the crown of your head.
gentle pressure.
Mm-hmm. Like this.
I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it when, I've done a couple by myself, it doesn't happen too often.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely in some classes, and also when I've done like meditation retreats and been with big leaders that lead you into meditations that are like so freaking deep, where you're sitting still, but you're vibing so fucking hard that you're like, you feel like you're rocking so fast. Is that stuck stuff, or just you're somewhere else? What is that? You know what I'm
Well,
talking
it
about?
depends. So if your body's involuntarily shaking,
No, like it feels like you're rocking.
yeah, no, that's Shakti. So that's the energy trying to get up. And usually when it vibrates throughout the entire body, it's not being directed directly into the channel, right? So instead of compressing that energy into the spine, and at that point you probably should pull a couple locks because it'll compress it into the channel where it'll go up like a rocket ship. Instead, there's a resistance somewhere, whether it's mental, emotional, whatever, and so it's dispersing throughout the rest of the energetic matrix, right? So it's
Yeah,
this
like
instead of that.
I thought I was like rocking a baby and rocking.
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I've done that.
And like vibing, vibing. And I knew I was doing something that felt rising. I felt.
And there's also
like,
what
happens. My eyes,
happens.
and I'm like, I'm not moving.
But when you may have been moving a little bit, and it's this motion, and what is this motion? But you're trying to release the Muladhara and Svadhisthana. So you're trying to release 1 and 2.
I didn't have that.
You were not, you were not getting it up into the center. It's going out through the body. And sometimes it might be too much. You ever had that feeling where you're like, man, I got to get rid of some of this, and I usually then move forward and put both of my hands on the ground, like done with that.
That's why people cry or
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so now instead of going up and out, we're going to cycle it. Yeah. Yeah. Same thing. Pull in your locks. Yes, and try and get it up and out, or at least. Choo, choo, choo. Like let it out somehow, or ground it down through your feet. It always depends, and don't forget, everything is a series of choices. What do you want this experience to be doing? Right? So do I need this energy at this moment? No. Then I'm gonna dump it. Right? I'll put it down through my feet, I'll send it out through my hands. Do I really want to take off in a triangle pose? Like, do you want to have out of body in triangle? Probably not. Like, I would not want to be like, ooh, in a pose where I just blew out my
where you popped.
Where I popped, yeah, and sometimes that's just muscle fatigue. Yeah, so you got to learn to read the difference. All right, now we're going to run the orbit. You got a potty? Okay, we'll take a little break. I know.
So Johnny cashed out and all that.
Yeah.
She's all Johnny cashed out.
It's like, oh, man. Learning a lot.
I'm sleepy too.
We were talking today when she decided to come with me instead of getting dumped at my sister's house with her cousins that all they do is stare at devices and she can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
She goes over, she's like, let's play a game, let's do something like
Let's interact as people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, kids don't do that enough anymore.
No, that's just like, no one wants to do anything.
They just want to stare at their devices.
But we were talking about when she was.
No, actually answering an email, like
when she
kids
was
going
around
back to
7,
Disney.
So 3-4 years ago, she told me that, first of all, she's getting very rich.
Okay, good to know.
Now, not because she needs to be rich, but because she sees me struggle, and she's like, I never want to have to work as hard as you. I was like, oh, interesting. You wouldn't hear no
Marrying for money is the hardest way to
She
get.
has 6 kids.
Oh, Lord.
And while the husband's away, the kids are at school, she just couldn't do yoga. Oh,
Nice.
I know we were talking about it today. So I said, oh, you'll be in a yoga class. You can decide then if you're going to yoga school.
I need that convenient. I need the meeting. There's Kleenex.
Why are you sleeping?
I picked. Oh.
I just fell on my block. That was like the most graceful thing I've done.
Always something.
Nope. All right, let's wrap
You
this.
know, like that's her
up.
day in life.
Sounds pretty great. But make your own money, and then you're not beholden to everybody.
Okay, so the difference between Mahabandha that we just did, which is, again, I'm repeating, the goal to get up and out is to have the astral experience, right? To bring your human Shakti up to the space. Microcosmic orbit is when you're like, nope, gonna keep that all. So when you pump, you tuck it, and instead of just letting the crown of your head, you don't roll the eyes, you keep the tongue in position all the time, and you let it cascade over the front of the body, down until it hits the pelvic floor, where you pick it back up and cycle it again. The trick to making this work is that you have to minimize the space between inhale and exhale. So you know how we have that natural like little pause, and then that natural little, that has to go away. So it's very circular, okay? And so you pump and release. And so the body should actually be waving as you're doing it, right? You'll see, okay? Shut down the eyes. Start just to breathe first. I want you to feel the energy down by that tennis ball. It's either warm, bright, vibrating, right? But get a sensation of something down there. All hot and bothered in your hot and bothered spot. And now as you're exhaling, you want to pull that sensation up through the system of locks over the crown of the head. And you let the locks go when you inhale, and the energy comes back down the front. Let the body rock with it. Remember, the transition point is the space between the teeth. Keep rolling it. Do 5 more rounds of the full roll. And then the last roll, don't let it drop all the way back down. Drop it in the belly button. When it's in the belly button, release all of the locking, release the circular breathing, and just meditate for a minute on your belly button. So if there's any heat in the body, condense it into the navel. Good, and then release. And just save that for later. I get hot when I do that.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, hot? Yeah.
My hands are hot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel the circuit. I had it at points, but I didn't.
You couldn't
I
feel
had
it?
to work with it.
Yeah. Well, you're also still working on getting your breathing back to its rhythm. Yeah. It has to be, yeah. Because you need the exhales to get the pumping working. Yeah. Okay, so we're not gonna roll. We're not gonna do we'll do the rolling another point in time. Maybe in the morning when you feel like playing with your mula bandha. We will visit these bandhas for the rest of training, right? So this is like snapshot, but you need to, like, you'll be able to crack rocks with your vagina when we're done. Sound good? Okay.
Rather than getting bad reconstruction.
There